Hey guys, today we're going to do a little bit of a controversial-ish subject, and that is talking about scaleless snakes. So this one, it does have a fair bit of controversy. Everybody kind of has their opinion about it, and I'm just going to essentially give my 2 cents. So joining with us is our scaleless Texas rat snake. So clearly I don't have that big of an issue to a degree because I have a scaleless rat snake here, and I am very interested in scaleless corn snakes as well. So, as you can clearly see, that scaleless snakes lack their scales. So, like, one of the most defining traits about the snake itself is absent, for the most part, in these snakes. So, a lot of the things that people will say are kind of messed up about these guys is that they don't have scales. So, their natural defenses aren't there, how they move is not correct, and all these other things. And I think a lot of that essentially comes to a lot of not necessarily misinformation, but information that wasn't all there when the scaleless ball pythons first came around. So there was a lot of kind of mystery and shroudedness around when the first scaleless ball pythons that were produced came about. Like the project kind of got sold off. There were these health issues that may or may not have had to do with because it was scaleless and all these things, hearsay or whatever may have you. But since then, quite a few people around the country have started to produce scaleless ball pythons, and there seem to be not any, detrimental health issues other than the fact that they just don't have scales. And for my thing about it is that there's kind of a big defining difference between the scaleless colubrids like the rat snakes and the corn snakes and the scaleless ball pythons. And that is we'll just say whether or not they have their belly scales and their ventral scales versus whether they don't. So our scaleless rat snake here, she has her belly scales. Her entire belly is fully scaled. She can scoot along and she has her ventral scales over here. The scaleless ball pythons are completely scaleless. Sometimes they have one here or there on their head or along their bodies, but for the most part, they're entirely scaleless. And so when that happens, there's a thing that can happen with the scaleless snakes that when they shed, because they shed just like every other snake, that it seems like the fact that they still have their belly and their ventral scales means they don't really have shedding issues, and they can kind of do a little bit better with that. With the scaleless ball pythons, they do have a little bit more of a shedding issue, and considering that ball pythons already are notoriously bad shedders, that can be a little bit of a red flag for a lot of people out there. With these guys, they're more temperate in general, so they don't need as high humidity. And so essentially how we keep her is we just keep her in a rack system with our ball pythons on coconut with humid hides, and she is just fine. We've had no shedding issues with her, and she's growing like a weed. I keep calling her a she because for 2 reasons. Number one, I'm really, really hoping that it turns out she is a girl, because we have a blue-eyed leucistic Texas rat snake who we know is a boy, who hopefully we can produce double hets. The other reason is that I am just god-awful at sexing snakes, and especially bad at sexing colubrid snakes, so I'm probably going to need a little bit of assistance, or, eventually one day we'll figure out exactly what she is. But she is a just incredibly passive snake when it comes to Texas rat snakes. Like most of them, you'll see they have a pretty good notorious reputation for being very defensive, kind of striky, and not want to be messed with. But this little girl is absolutely perfect. And you can see she does have a little bit of scalation, like along her head, and there's a couple along her sides. But for the most part, she is absolutely perfect. And the other kind of fun thing about scaleless snakes in general are that it seems like with corn snakes and rat snakes, their pattern and coloration changes a lot when their scales are absent or not. With the ball pythons, it's mostly the pattern stays entirely there, and the other ones, and whether they have scales or not, it just kind of changes up a little bit. But if you look at like a Texas rat snake like this girl, they'd be a lot darker. The pattern wouldn't be as nice or as clean. So that's just kind of something interesting to me. And I think as long as that they do have these belly and ventral scales, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I mean, you can say that like, oh, this is, kind of a weird thing, they shouldn't exist in nature, but if you think about it, this is a genetic mutation that did just kind of pop up, kind of like all of the other mutations and all of the other color morphs in ball pythons and any other type of species of snake that did just kind of pop up too, that we encouraged and allowed and bred through. So the fact that it exists is kind of like, well, then maybe a banana ball python shouldn't exist. The fact is whether or not it's detrimental to their health. Like, is this thing being born a lot of stillborns, like the leucistic carpet pythons from the super jags? Those things are, a lot of time, they're born all white, and most of them are stillborn, or they don't live very long. So it's not something like that, or it's something that will lead to a detriment in their behavior. I've heard stories about like the scaleless ball pythons that have, they needed to be rubbed with oil and other stuff like that. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but if that is, then maybe that's something that we maybe need to look at. But when it just comes to, just keeping a little extra humidity like you would if you were doing just other just type of tropical species of snake for something like this, I think that's perfectly fine. This girl is absolutely healthy. She's an amazing pet. She's great for if I ever would love to start doing animal, shows and demos and educational things like that, because she just has a great personality. Her temperament's perfect, and she's a scaleless snake, which is just something super cool. So if you guys thought you got a little bit something from this, I know it's a bit of a controversial subject. Everybody's allowed to have their opinions or thoughts on the matter, and that's perfectly fine. That's what's great about this country. You're allowed to have your opinions and say things about it. But this is just my personal 2 cents about it. And if you guys want to, give me your opinions, please try to keep it PC. All like 50 of you guys that actually watch these videos. Number 1, super appreciative of that. And number 2, please try to keep it a little bit PC. Keep it nice to people. Let me know your opinions down below. If you guys have ideas, kind of interesting things that you could do about this. Eventually, I want to make leucistic scaleless snakes, which will look probably a little weird, but I just kind of want to see what happen. But they're going to be healthy little snakes. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have any ideas for future ways to improve, let me know down in the comments. Hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, and I'll check you next time.